Hey everybody, welcome to Dog Interactions Level 1 at Charleston Animal Society. My name is Kathleen Donnelly. I'm going to be your instructor today. A little background on me, I have been a volunteer here at Charleston Animal Society for about 8 years. I started working on the dog floor, also called the adoption floor or the A floor, which is I believe where most of you will be doing your volunteering to start with, and you might move to other areas from there. Is everyone familiar with where the A floor is in the dog room? Have you been through there at all? Okay. So I started in there, and then after a little while volunteering with the dogs, I then moved to what's called the beach, being a lifeguard on the beach. Some of you might be familiar with that. That's when the dogs are coming out of surgery, normally for spay or neuter surgery, but it could be something else. And as they're coming out of the anesthesia, they're on these blankets and towels, right? And it looks like a beach with a bunch of dogs laying on them. And you help them kind of come out, because they're scared. They're, you know, like most people coming out of anesthesia, like, where am I? What's going on? So you give them a soothing welcome back to the real world, clean their ears, clip their nails, things like that. So move to that. And since that is handled more in the back, in a room in the back, that gave me exposure to more of what was going on in other parts of the shelter. So the adoption floor is sort of the public area, you know, but then there's the whole back, and it just doesn't have a more technical name. But in the back is where all the surgeries are going on and behavioral assessments. And it's also where there's a whole slew of other dogs. So up in the front, we've got about 20 dogs in the kennels on the adoption floor. And in the back, there are about almost up to 200 dogs when we're at capacity here. And so as much as it's needed to have folks up at the front exercising and interacting and giving the dogs some attention in the front, also there are all these dogs in the back. And we need more volunteers back there too. So anyone who wants to talk to me about that afterwards, there are a couple more steps you have to go through because it's a little bit more training, it's a little more intense because the dogs back there haven't all been tested. Like the ones up here, we already kind of know what's going on with them behaviorally. But if you're interested in that, let me know. From there, I moved to working one-on-one with the dogs there to doing something called playgroups. How many people are familiar with the playgroups here? Okay, a couple people have heard about that. So playgroups are basically dog recess. So when you're on the adoption floor working with the dogs, it's one person and one dog at a time, which is good because they need to learn how to interact properly with people or remember how to if it's been a while, right? Because that gives them a successful adoption. But by the same token, nothing wears a dog out like another dog, right? And a lot of people want to know, well, does this dog get along with other dogs? So there's so many advantages to having dogs playing with each other that they've gone through special training here. There's a 4-member behavior team, and they've all been trained in doing these play groups. And if we get a chance on our tour near the end, hopefully there'll be a play group going on and I can show you that. But that's another volunteer opportunity for you that you can work up to, which is being a play group runner, which is where you go and get the dogs and bring them out to be in the recess, to be in play groups, and then also bring them back. And that's also very fulfilling because you get to see the dogs really enjoying themselves, right? So if anyone's interested in that after, just have a chat with me. I'm gonna have you put a special like smiley face or heart or something next to your name on the sign-up sheet because we'd love to get more people involved in that as well, okay? So sort of the lay of the land of what we're doing today is I'm gonna be taking you through 2 main topics of information. One is gonna be about how to read dogs and about dog behavior so that you have successful interactions with them and also successful for them. And then the second side of things is going to be how things are done here at Charleston Animal Society. How many people have volunteered with dogs somewhere else before or worked with dogs before? Okay, that's typically what I see is about 1/3 of the class has already done something with dogs. How many people have dogs at home? Almost everybody, okay. How many people love dogs? Everybody, okay, good. Then you're all in the right room. So I would just ask, and I'll repeat this as we go through, you want to keep in mind that the way you worked with dogs before or the way you interact with your own dogs might not be the way it's done here. And there's reasoning and rationale for that, but the main idea is that we want the dogs to have a very consistent experience here. So we want all of their human interactions to be the same, which is not only helpful for them from keeping them relaxed and less stressed, like it's not that each person comes up, well, what is this person gonna do? How are they gonna act with me? But it also just gets them used to maybe particular commands or things like that, all of which help with their adoption, which is what the entire goal is, obviously, right? So those are the two aspects of what we're going to cover in the classroom, quote unquote. I've got a video of some things. I'll show you a couple things with my volunteer Sassy here. And then we'll end the class by going on a quick tour of the adoption floor where I'm going to show you some of the things live and in person instead of just on a PowerPoint slide. Sound good? Okay. If you guys have questions as we go along, feel free to raise your hand. It's a pretty casual deal here, so just let me know if you have questions as we go along, okay? All right, so here we are. So the goals of training today are, as I mentioned, consistency. I think I've explained that pretty well, so we can skip that. And it's next about safety. So we want to make sure you guys are safe. We want to make sure the dogs are safe. That's a successful outcome for both, right? Leading to successful adoptions. I talked a little bit about that already. Your interactions with the dogs help make their process on meet and greets, help make their process of when they first move into a new home smoother and better, right? I mean, on the direct implication, when you're working with the dogs and exercising them, that means they're going to be a little bit more calm when they're meeting people, right? They're going to be less jumping up on the cages, jumping up on people when they're first meeting them here. And so people are going to be more apt to think, oh, this is a good dog. This is a dog that I could adopt. And by the same token, if they get that far and then adopt them, if you've worked with the dogs and they're better at interacting with people, then their first weeks and months are going to go better in their new home, right? And so there's going to be less of a chance of them being returned for some sort of an issue. Success in volunteer role. That goes really with consistency and safety. So if you are confident about what you're doing, and if you aren't getting bit by a dog because you didn't realize it was upset and it lashed out at you or something like that, then you're going to be able to keep coming, right? Which is good for Charleston Animal Society, and it's good for you because you signed up for this because you want to have a good experience. Safety first. So let's talk about proper attire. You want to wear closed-toe shoes, and you want to wear long pants, okay? Because the dogs are jumping and things like that. I would also highly, highly recommend long sleeves. As someone who's done this for 8 years and does not have a bunch of scratches all over her arms, that is why, because they will get excited and they will jump up. Even 70, 80, 90, July weather, I'm wearing long sleeves out there because it's better. I could also advise you might want to just invest in buying some scrubs. You'll feel kind of more official, which is kind of fun. But also they're lightweight, so they're not going to be as hot when you're layered up, and you can just get them so dirty and toss them. They're the easiest to clean. So just, as a suggestion, you can certainly wear jeans, or you can come in here in a prom dress if you want, but I would wear long gloves, okay? So things to avoid are hats and sunglasses inside, heavy perfume, jewelry, and other objects. So what's going on with this is two things. One, the dogs want to be able to see and read you as much as we want you to be able to see and read the dogs. So the more kind of accoutrements you've got going on, the less they're able to read you, particularly sunglasses, because they look at your eyes to see how you're reacting. And we'll go through some of the things you can look at in dogs' eyes, and they're going to be looking for those things with you too. Are you looking away? There's something called whale eye where you can see the whites of their eyes. They're going to be trying to read your eyes as well. So if you can avoid wearing sunglasses at least at first, when you're first getting the dog and then taking them out, it's fine to maybe put them on once you're outside, but just to maybe avoid that up front. And in general, having things on is just one more thing that can get knocked by the dog if they're trying to play with you or roughhouse with you or something like that. So I would avoid those. Heavy perfume goes back to the consistency idea. So you don't want a bunch of different smells and things going on with the dogs. That it's just one more thing, to kind of put them on edge. So that's the reason for that. Jewelry makes sense, like I was saying with the sunglasses and the regular glasses. These could easily just get ripped right out of the ear. Other objects would be things you just need to be aware that some people have a cane, or if you're walked in with an umbrella or something like that. You've seen this before, right? You've seen sometimes dogs that are fine with everything else, and then someone comes in with a weird hat or something, and now the dog's a little freaked out. Okay, so what happens if you've been bitten or scratched? It's interesting to me that this slide is so early on in the presentation, and I think it's just a good opportunity for me to tell you that a lot of what I'm going to go over today represents kind of what could go wrong or a worst case scenario, because I don't have to tell you about the best case scenario. Best case scenario is you're out there and the dog is running and frolicking like a Disney movie, right? You already know all that. You don't need instruction on that. So don't think that just because I'm going over a lot of kind of negative things that you're gonna have a bunch of negative days. Everybody good? Everybody clear on that? Okay. So if you have been bitten or scratched, you wanna report it to a staff member immediately. And if you have a scratch that hasn't broken the skin, I wouldn't worry about something like that. It's more if the skin has been broken. And so what happens then? So you let the staff know, and then they'll check you out, they'll check the dog out, and they'll determine if the dog needs to go into a quarantine hold, which is something that's mandated by DHEC, right? And it's a 5-day hold typically. And what it means is they'll move from the adoption floor to then being in that back area. So they'll go back to one of the kennels back there. Now remember, we're not a kill shelter. You haven't just, set this dog up for a horrible end. He or she just has to go hang out there for 5 days while they do a couple tests and make sure that there's not some sort of an infection or rabies or something like that. I mean, they've all been vaccinated, but it's a special precaution. Now, if you're like me, you're gonna be tempted to be like, I'm just not gonna report this because I don't want the dog to go back into quarantine for 5 days. That our hearts are big, we don't want that to happen. Here's why you don't want to do that. And I tell you this because you'll have this thought, and I want to help you quell the thought right away. If something were to happen, if you did happen to get sick, or if the dog happened to get sick and there was some sort of a health issue, and then DHEC gets involved, then they could shut down the shelter. And so you can see where that is much worse than one dog going into quarantine for 5 days. See what I mean? Okay. So just let a staff member know, and then they'll advise you from there.